Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're talking about this brand new palette that is coming soon from Huda Beauty. I'm talking about the Empowered palette. This is the annual big palette from Huda Beauty. According to the info that they provided when they sent this palette over to me and what I've seen on their Instagram page, this will be launching online and in store on October 3rd. I believe this will be a worldwide launch date, so this is not rolling out at different times for different countries, different retailers. I'm just assuming from them saying launching worldwide on October 3rd, that means that all the different retailers around the world will all drop this palette on the same day. This one will be priced at $67 US. This is the same 18 pan format that we've seen in the recent large palettes. So I'm talking Rose Quartz, Naughty Nudes, and Mercury Retrograde. It has the same heavy duty plastic outer packaging, same locking clasp closure, same big old mirror inside there. And this palette doesn't come with a brush or an applicator of any kind. So I've decided that I'm gonna break this up into two videos. So in today's video, you're gonna see swatches, a bunch of comparisons, close-ups of all the shades. You can hear my thoughts, my review, all that. And then I'll do a separate second video with a couple of looks from this palette. Because there are so many different textures and because this palette does have really a cool toned side, a warm toned side, I want to show you multiple looks featuring all these different textures, all these different tones. So I'm going to do that in a separate video. That way I don't feel like I'm rushing through everything. I really want to give you the best possible information, the best possible tutorials and swatches. So keep an eye out for the tutorial video coming soon with a couple looks from this Empowered palette. But today we're just going to go through all the basics. Let's start with a close-up look at this palette and its packaging. There's a lot more than meets the eye with this packaging, so I'm going to try to give you as many details as I can. First of all, looking at the box here, I noticed on the back that there appears to be what I assume is Braille. I don't really know. I guess I'm kind of showing my ignorance here, but that's what my assumption is. I tried to look for more information about this. They didn't send any. I can't find anything online, but I just thought that was an interesting detail. If you know anything about Braille, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm very interested. And there's also on the front cover of the actual palette a QR code in this very pixelated looking image. I'm showing you a sped up version here. It took me over 2 minutes to actually capture this QR code and get to the website. But it takes you here to the site where you can enter to win a mentorship session with Huda, which is such a cool prize. It starts on October 3rd. That's when applications open up. So just FYI, that's what this QR code thing is all about. Now let's get to the palette. We have the classic Huda eyes across the front. Love it or hate it, she definitely does keep with a certain theme. And then on the back of the palette, just some more instructions about navigating to that QR code. When you open up inside, you can see there is a nice large mirror in here. I already talked a bit about the features and packaging of this palette, so I want to get straight into the eyeshadow shades. We have 3 rows of 6, but I look at it more as 2 side-by-side 9 pans because there's definitely a cooler toned and a warmer toned side. The shades Purpose and Worthy are a cream formula. You can use them as an eyeshadow base or as a eyeliner. The remaining shades are 9 true mattes and then 7 different textures of shimmery metallics. Some are really foiled, some are more of a classic shimmer. So there's definitely a lot of different textures happening in the shadows in this palette. Now that you've had a close-up look at this Empowered palette, I want to show you first the finger and brush swatches. I'll show you those swatches 9 at a time. That way you can really look at these shades individually and you can get a feel for how they look on the skin. The only two that I'm not going to swatch with a brush are these cream shadows. I'll just do a finger swatch for those, but you will get to see these in action in my tutorials video. You'll get to see me apply these shades with a brush as an eyeliner in that video and also with my finger as an eye base. But for now, let's just take a look at the swatches of the Empowered palette. The mattes seem to be very, very consistent performance-wise, both across this palette and in line with previous Huda palette releases. I really like the velvety, blendable nature of Huda's matte formula. Then with the shimmers here, we have Courageous is a very standard shimmer. Limitless and Bold Moves feel more like a foiled texture. And then Manifest It has sort of that gel-like texture mixed in, but it's not the suspended pearls of pigment like the previous palettes. A lot of people didn't like the look of that. So this seems to be like a similar texture in the shade Manifest It, but it's just a different look, a different way to present that texture. Do It seems more like a standard metallic. Visionary is one of the swirled pigment shades, and Charisma is another really shimmery, foily type finish. Now I want to show you a bunch of comparisons with this palette. Some from within the Huda Beauty brand and then some from other brands. I have a lot of good comparisons here, so let's take a look at those swatches now. This is probably one of the best comparisons just right out the gate here. This isn't an exact duping type of situation. There are a couple of shades that aren't quite matched here and there. However, I feel that if you have Wild Jaguar and the Nude Medium Obsessions palettes, you pretty much have this color story covered with the Huda formulas. The only thing you're really missing are the cream shadows, some different textures, but overall the color story is there. Now, a couple people requested the Rose Gold Remastered comparison over on my Instagram page, and this is actually a way better match than I expected. However, I notice a huge difference in the formulas for me, especially with the shimmers. Obviously, the Rose Gold palette has a little bit more red pink. It's missing some of the cooler tones, but the big difference for me is just touching these shades and feeling the textural difference. Next, let's take a look at the Rose Quartz palette. This is last year's big palette from Huda. And, you know, overall, I would say there are a couple of these gray and silvery shades that seem kind of similar, but there's not as much overlap here as I expected. I definitely thought that Rose Quartz would have more shade matches than Rose Gold Remastered, and it doesn't seem to be the case, but I do think that these two palettes could work really well together as companion palettes. Next, we'll talk about the Naughty Nude palette. At this point in the comparisons, I think all of these neutrally shades just start to blend together and everything looks the same. But if you really take the time to look at these one-to-one, there's maybe 3 shades that are similar here, but I think your eyeballs just sort of start to mesh all of these neutrals together. Naughty Nude is definitely a lot more red and pink tones pulling through, and Empowered seems a lot more neutral in comparison. Now, Bare Necessities, I think, has the absolute best matches. You can pretty much dupe this palette. Couple of shades are off, maybe 3 shades that are really, really different here. But overall, I think if you have ColourPop Bare Necessities, this is going to be the best one-to-one palette dupe. So if you have Bare Necessities already, you don't need to spring for the Empowered palette. Obviously, the textures are a little bit different, but performance-wise, I think these are going to look very similar on the eyes. Now, I haven't pulled out my ABH palettes in a while, but I think that this Soft Glam gave a very good showing in the comparisons today. And honestly, I think when it comes to neutral palette comparisons, you could sort of just throw a rock in any direction in my office and come up with a bunch of decent comparisons. Just keep in mind before you start to get upset about how similar a lot of these swatches are. Not everybody has all of these palettes. Not everybody has access to all of these. Not everybody even wants to purchase all of these palettes. So it's always good to have a lot of different choices. I know, for example, that the Huda brand is more accessible to my friends in the UK versus something like ColourPop is. So it's always nice to have a lot of choices. It may feel frustrating to see so many similar shades out here, but what's redundant for one person may be the exact perfect thing that somebody else has been waiting for. Obviously, after seeing all those swatch comparisons, it's pretty easy to tell that the innovation, the specialness, uniqueness in this palette is not necessarily the shades chosen, but the textures in which those shades are presented. Look, neutral palettes are neutral palettes. I feel like I kind of say a version of this every time a neutral palette is released. Whether you are a person who wears a lot of neutral shades or not, companies keep making neutral palettes because people keep buying them. These are the kind of shades that people are wearing and using. Even people who love colorful shadows still own neutral shadows as well. So every time a neutral palette comes out, there tends to be a section of people that moans about it, about more neutrals, and I do think that some brands catch more flack for releasing neutral palettes than others. At least in my observation, in my little slice of the internet, some brands get absolutely roasted for releasing neutrals, while others get praised and loved despite coming out with a lot of neutrals. Maybe that's a hot take, I don't know. But it does seem like Huda is one of the brands that catches flack for releasing neutrals. And, you know, overall, I am somebody who likes both neutrals and colorful palettes, and I think that this is lovely. There are some shades that are too repetitive. There are probably 3 shades in here that I would have liked to see swapped out to add another layer of interest to this palette. These are the shades that I'm talking about specifically that I think are just too similar to one another within this palette. Just swapping out one from each of these pairings for a different shade could have massively expanded this palette's capabilities, in my opinion. So I am going to show you what I would have done. I did a very, very slight redesign on this palette. I ended up swapping out one of the gold shades, Limitless, for a really light, bright, cool toned silver. And then I swapped out one of the rose gold shades called Do It with a really deep, shimmery charcoal gray. And then in my redesign, I replaced both of the peachy shades from the swatch I just showed you for a really deep, warm olive matte and a deep warm olive shimmer. I feel like this just adds a whole nother layer of interest to this palette while keeping this very neutral, very earthy, very warm meets cool tones type of vibe. Something like this I think would absolutely change the perception of this palette, and just a little bit of tweak could make it from a nice, pretty neutral palette to something that subverts expectation for the Huda brand just a little bit more. But all in all, I think this is a really pretty palette. It's definitely not my favorite of the large palettes, but it's not my least favorite either. I like this palette a lot. I think it's much more interesting texture-wise and undertone-wise than many of the neutral palettes I have in my own collection. So now's the time when I want to hear what you think about this palette. Are you interested? Are any of these textures calling to you? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you feel very lukewarm towards it? We don't all have to agree. We just do have to be nice to each other. Now's the time when I want to hear what you think about this palette. Please leave all your thoughts down in the comments below and keep an eye out for my tutorial video coming soon. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Wah, 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 wah. This smoky eye is so cute. I think because it's purple instead of being like black or really dark gray, it gives it a little bit of softness, at least for me. Hello, matching nail game. I got distracted. I'm an adult. Okay, let's pay attention to what we're doing. All right, it's going good. It's going good. I know a lot of people really hate these waters. I call it fancy water. LaCroix, whatever you want to call it. I call it fancy water. So, people hate on this. I don't know why. Just don't drink it if you don't like it. I like it, and it helps me to drink a lot more water during the day. But this guava flavor, the guava Sao Paulo, oh, it's so good. I got a bunch of this and a bunch of the hibiscus flavor, and I am just in fancy water heaven. Just me and Hello Kitty. Two cute goth chicks. If you only knew the absolute number of Halloween Hello Kitty mugs I own, it's 4. But I feel like that's a lot. Well, one's not Halloween, one is like fall themed because it's pumpkin spice themed. But yes, 3 decidedly Halloween mugs. If Huda or ColourPop comes out with a neutral palette, people are beside themselves. They're furious. But Natasha and Charlotte Tilbury are out here. What can I say? Said I wasn't going to name any names and then I did it anyway. Fire sign behavior. Guilty. Okay, I'm getting very distracted by my eyeshadow. I just love my eyeshadow. I love the way my nail polish looks with this eyeshadow, with my black cat earrings. I've been in a fall vibe and I feel like this is the seamless transition into the Halloween vibe that I needed. And I'm excited about it. Okay, done being weird. Nah, that's probably a lie. Alright, thanks for watching me and my Hello Kitty Halloween mug, and I hope that you have a lovely day, and if you don't, then I hope that tomorrow's better. And it's okay. Everybody has bad days like that. I have them. Everybody watching here has them. It's okay. It's normal. You're doing alright. You're doing your best. You're doing great, and I love your face, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye.